I'm gonna just get us started, and we'll do the show, and we'll ask you some questions about you and life and stuff, and then if we have time, we might get into some news articles and stuff. Since I know you've heard the show before, so we might just talk about some, whatever's happening in the world, and that's about it.
I was hoping we would talk about some Game of Thrones because I have my crown nearby and I was looking forward to any opportunity to put it on. So
Okay.
That's okay. I know y'all like, I mean, it's your show and it's y'all show. Y'all been doing it for, it's y'all know what you're doing. But I'm just saying, if you're taking suggestions, which I don't think you would, but
we might talk a little bit. It's we probably won't get into too much detail like a recap, but we might talk a little bit Game of Thrones with you. No biggie. All right, here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Black Guy Who Tips podcast. I am your host, Rod, joined as always by my co-host
Karen,
and we're live on a Tuesday.
Yay!
You may be like, did y'all not do a show Sunday and Monday? You are correct. Okay, it was not a typo. It wasn't an error in your feed. Watch the life. Hashtag watch life is what they're calling it.
Hashtag old.
Hashtag old. Karen worked out a couple times, and then she just suddenly couldn't stay up past 8 o'clock.
Woo, this Bob was like, I don't know what you think you're doing. We ain't done this in a hot minute, so you know what you need to do? Go on and sit yourself down somewhere. I caught a mini cold. It was like, you know what?
Shout out to the VR workout. We have the Oculus Quest 2, and we do the Supernatural workout. And I did it yesterday, and I woke up this morning. My back was feeling.
I told
kinda,
you.
I said, "Ooh, it works."
Honey, your knees be hot, your back be hot, everything be hot. You be like, ooh.
But that's neither here nor there. Okay, we also have a very special guest today. First time guest on the show. Today's guest is Governor of the Black Women Stitch Black Women Stitch group, host and producer of the Stitch Please podcast and Game of Thrones, Professor Lisa Woolfork. What's going on, Lisa?
Hey friends. Hey, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. It is a real honor. Thank you. Huge fan.
Thank you for coming on. Mm-hmm. The first thing I want to ask you about, I mean, we'll get to Game of Thrones, I promise. I'm going to ask you about that. But the stitching, I want to ask you about that. Like, one, how'd you get into stitching? I was listening to your podcast to do like some research and stuff. I thought it was pretty informative. So like, what was the first thing that made you even like get into stitching?
So it's funny. When I grew up, my mother sewed, my grandmother sewed. I wanted nothing to do with it. I spent my days being poked by pins and, why on earth would you, come stand still? Well, honestly, I would stand still if I wasn't being poked. This is a human response to pain. But there was a lot of that, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I mean, I rejected a lot of it. And then I started graduate school, and I needed some type of stress relief because typically graduate school is it's very solitary. And so I wanted something that I could do that could make me feel like, give me a nice feeling of end success. So it's like, okay, I will start with this piece of fabric and end up with, a jacket. And that's what really became a real hobby for me. And I absolutely loved it. So I kind of fell in love with it. My mother is more amazed than anybody. She's like, you sewing something as much as all that complaining and carrying on. We had to hear from you. But I did end up falling in love with it. And then now I do a lot of sewing and a lot of advocacy around sewing. And I have theories around sewing as connected to liberation and creative expression. And so it's not just the sewing, but it's also sewing as a life skill, sewing as a hobby, and sewing as a pathway to the expression and liberation.
Yeah, I think sewing is something that people have gotten away from for various reasons. Everything is cheaper now. By the time I was excited, by the time you buy all that shit, you might as well went on to Amazon. They got a 2 for $5 and went on about your business, right? Because the fabric and stuff like that. So I completely understand that. And as somebody, I haven't sewed in a while, but as somebody who loves to sew, I I was so like I still have some quilts, and my mother-in-law got me into sewing. Wonderful. She got me a sewing machine when I graduated from college, and so I've never gotten the clothes or anything like that, but I would do small things. And the thing that I can't speak for anybody else, but the thing that I kind of have always loved about sewing, it is a free for all. Yes. If you can imagine it, you can literally make it happen. And that's something for adults. Our imagination is crushed from our 9 to 5, from us putting it away from our children, putting it away from our mates. You know, a lot of people have a lot of creativity within themselves, but the world tells you don't waste your time in that. Or if you're not doing it to get paid, why waste your time? But sometimes you can just do it for a hobby. It's not always about making a dollar out of it. Like you say, it is very relaxing. I remember when I was in college, I before I got my sewing machine, I would hand sew. So I would hand sew and hand stitch a lot of things, and it would take a long time. But it was just that process, that laying it out and putting it together and all that type of stuff. And technology about sewing. Mm-hmm. For those of you that I'm sorry, I know I'm going on a rant, but this is my time. The sewing, for those of you that don't know, sewing with technology is like it's like a brand new world. Totally. They got sewing machines that are like the Lamborghini of sewing machines. Them bitches cost thousands of dollars. They top of the line. But what you can do, you can go to your computer, you can download the image, and you can tell it to go, and it will go. And for my mama, I made some. You can actually take images and actually photocopy them to fabric. And I've made her a pillow. They have like all her brothers and sisters on them. Military pictures or their high school graduation pictures. And I made her a beautiful long pillow, and she loved that thing. She's like, this is one of her favorite things. That I cut it up and I got it to be in color, and she absolutely loves it. And so for me, I love just the creativity piece of it. I think sometimes when it's sold, I'm not trying, and maybe it's just me, I'm just saying from my perspective, a lot of times when it's sold and pushed, it's sold as that's something that white women do. And so for the black people, they have a tendency to think that this is something my grandma, my great grandma does, but this is not something that kind of black people get into. But you will be amazed how many people actually get into it, like it, and love it. You know, and particularly if you are somebody where you're tired of shopping and it don't fit right, it ain't long enough, it ain't big enough.
You know, can't fit your booty,
right? Or it can't fit your breast, you know, or it can't fit your hips, or if you're like me, you go and not trying to be funny, you got a big butt, so when you put something on, the skirt jacks up 3 inches, and you're okay, now I'm jacked up in the front and I'm long. I mean, I'm jacked up in the back and I'm long in the front. Like you don't get a even circle around the bottom how a skirt is supposed to go, and you know, little things like that. And particularly, all joke aside, once you get over a certain size, they act like all you want to wear is some goddamn flowers or your grandma quilt, like
or a potato sack.
Yeah, y'all want to be pretty too. Y'all want to wear the pinks and the greens and all that. Y'all want to wear that stuff too. And it's very frustrating when you go in there and they act like it's 1925 if you're over a size 12. And you're like, if you don't get out of here, I want to be sexy too.
I mean, like, and the thing that I love about what you've said is that this is one of the ways that sewing is a key to liberation. And then by that, I mean, when you are making things that fit your body, you have somehow given the lie to this idea that people are standard sizes. There are no standard people. People aren't standard sizes. It's really the flaw of the world in which we live that wants to determine conformity, right? That this is the, you know, it's the same thing with BMI. You know, that same white supremacist tree that gave us BMI as an index for health is anti-Black. Similarly, you know, one of the reasons that I created Black Women Stitch was in result to my own organizing and activism. But it was like, at the end of the day, it turned out that sewing with the whites, as I called it, sewing with the whites is not as fun as you would imagine. And so I have the backstories about my work as a BLM organizer in Charlottesville and a lot of active resistance against white supremacy and a lot of writing and interviews. And I co-founded a media collective and I sewed a giant puppet. I mean, I was trying to fight white supremacy in all the ways, right? At the end of the day, after this terrible, terrible thing happens in Charlottesville, and for those of you who don't know about the white supremacist terror attacks in 2017 here in Charlottesville, it was a nightmare. It was white supremacists in the streets. It was brawls. And then at the end, there was the attack of James Field plowing through the crowd and murdering Heather Heyer. And I was there. I was there at the intersection when that car came through. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare. And what surprised me, well, it didn't really surprise me. I was stunned, right? Of course, traumatized. And then my stunned, traumatized ass says, you know what, I would like a break. I'm going to go to this little quilt retreat outside of town. It's the same one I've been going to for the last 15 years. Yes, I'm always the only Black person. Yes, even though I'm not young, I think I'm older than both of y'all, and I'm still the youngest person at this event.
Well, you look great. Okay, don't let nobody tell you different. Okay,
thank you. Appreciate you.
I thought you were younger than us.
Oh my gosh, you're my new best friends. You're my new best friends.
I know, coming in here with that flawless skin.
I got to call y'all every 5 minutes. Thank you. Please be sure to leave your phone number and expect. I also like to send text messages word by word, like, can you believe this shit? Expect those messages as well. You don't have to worry about me harassing you on Twitter because I don't do Twitter. I can't keep up. I can't figure it out. But I will text the shit out of you. And so I went to this event, and it was an all-white event like normal. And people had heard I was there. They were like, "Oh, Lisa, I know you do the organizing, and you teach Black studies. And what happened? What was it like?" And so people would ask me, and so I told them. I said, "Oh, it was terrible. Like this was a group of white women that are Virginians. I'm in Virginia. Many of them are hardcore Virginians in all the ways you can imagine. If not actively pro-Confederacy, then kind of tacitly, I guess, Black Lives Matter, like that. And so it happened. I went to the event, and then when I got home, like a couple of weeks later, I realized I saw that the organizer of that event was acting funny. She wasn't talking to me. She was acting weird. At the end, I said goodbye. She didn't speak back. I was like, okay, whatever. What's the problem? 2 weeks later, when I got home from this event, time has passed. I had paid money, a deposit for the next event with that group. When I got back, my check was returned to me in an empty envelope. It was my address, and that check. Now, dumbass me, I'm like, I wonder if this event has been canceled. I should see. I know one person. I know a person. I've been knowing her for years, very conservative Baptist lady out in, the western part of Virginia. Let me just check with her and see. Well, Lisa, I don't know what to say. I don't think the event's not been canceled, so I don't know why your check has been returned. You know what? I think it's because you broke the rule. There was a rule that Charlottesville was not to be discussed.
Wow.
And you discussed it. And I was like,
y'all asked.
They asked.
Hell is this?
Trust me. I was like, you are not the people that I would go in and open my heart to about these events, right? This is not the group for that, right? And so, listen, y'all, when I tell you I was so hurt, I was so hurt. I was really hurt.
Right.
And then, these are the people like when my father died, I was at an event with them. My father died just suddenly, like out of nowhere. These people made a quilt for me, right? With their signatures, right? They gave me my money back because I had to leave the event early because of this tragedy. So I thought that meant something. But what it didn't mean that they were not willing to trade their white supremacy for me. Right. They were not willing to give up their comfort for me. And they were not willing to stop saying things like, if people don't want to get hit by cars, they shouldn't protest in the street.
Oh my God.
And so I was then, after I processed all that, and then I started thinking about like, you know what? I bet these people have been going around saying I'm their Black friend. They see me running here. And they're like, I know a black lady. She a professor and everything up at that school. Oh yeah, I'm not a racist. I sit across from her all weekend and don't manage to call her a nigger. Like, I mean, honestly, like that. And then after I got embarrassed, then I got mad. And I was embarrassed. I was like, who did these people think I was all this time? Right. Who did they think I was? And I'm like, I just cannot. And so then I said, you know what? I need something different. I need something else. I need something. And that's when I turned back to my roots. My own mother, and my mother sewed, my grandmother sewed, my father's mother sewed, like both grandmothers on both sides sewed. Like, I come from, this belongs to us. This is my ancestral craft. And anytime I sewed at home with my family, it was only Black women doing it. And they would hang out, they would do. So anyway, all of that was say, I took a very long path to get back to the center. And I feel great about it. And like they say, those things that break your heart can correct your vision.
Yes.
And that is what happened. And that's what happened to me. And that's why, like, now I'm like, people are like, Black women stitch. Shouldn't it be all women stitch? No. Like, I don't respond. I don't respond. Right. I have no tolerance for it. And it's so funny because some other folks who are similar, like they might get they get shady comments. They get like lectures from white people or whatever. I don't get it. I do not get those comments, not on Instagram, not on social. Sometimes like some cracker will find me and write me at work, and like, please explain, Professor, why you think that fascism is connected to it. I'm like, nah, and I don't answer those either, actually. I'm like, I don't work for you. So
yeah, I mean, there seems to be like a very organized attack. I feel like obviously Charlottesville was a huge part of this, right? You will not replace us is literally the mantra of these white people marching with tiki torches. But it definitely seems like a coordinated attack on academia and on history and truth and unobjectable fact, so
yes.
I'd imagine with you one being in Virginia, where y'all just had, like the GOAT governor Blackface.
Come on through.
And then afterwards, you have like a openly anti CRT, as they're calling it, but we all know that's just them trying to keep any reality out of the school, any racial history out of the school.
That's right.
You had that's what followed that up, which is par for the course for the backlash, right? And
absolutely.
I think we're currently in a time of backlash, probably since 2008. I don't know what happened in 2008, but since 2008, we've been in a like a backlash. And
so weird.
It's interesting that you could feel that in the group of your peers with the sewing, but also you just alluded to getting emails at your job, which feels like an extenuation or at least connection to that, to even the whole, we can't have you being all Black up in the sewing circle.
Not at all. Not at all. And like, in one of my favorite letters that I got, I wrote this piece for the Washington Post, and it was called Thomas Jefferson is the R. Kelly of the American Enlightenment.
Come on through.
Because Thomas Jefferson, like when Thomas Jefferson met Sally Hemings, she was a toddler. She was a baby. She came in with her mother as part of Jefferson's inheritance. She was pregnant the first time at 14. So like, this is not a metaphor. This is an actual fact. Right. And what holds them together is misogynoir, this contempt for Black women and Black women being debated, whatever. And so I get letters, around things like that. And this idea that for some reason there is this constant challenge to Black authority, right? And I sometimes find that at all levels, even within my own classes and among my own students, I have to often like pause and say, I know they don't mean to say this racist shit. And I have to say, and then I have to write to them and say, I know you don't mean to say this racist shit. I might or might not use the word shit, depending on if we're having a conversation.
Yeah, of course.
But like, because they don't know. Like they don't,
that's what they've been taught, and that's what they've been fed. And it's honestly what they believe, and anything that debunks what they believe, it becomes a problem. Because the older I get, the more I realize, even Black people, anything that goes against the foundation of what you've been taught, people automatically reject it. Anything that tells you that what you've been taught is wrong, what you've been taught is biased, what you've been taught is sexist, what you've been taught is homophobic, like anything that teaches you that makes you question, oh, my grandmama and them might be wrong. My uncle and them might be wrong. These people that took care of me and fed me, they might be flawed human beings. Yes, they are, because they're human beings. And human beings are flawed. But nobody wants to look at the people that raised them as being flawed people. That's why we put parents on this pedestal, and then we're hurt and we're disappointed and we're crushed when they don't meet our expectations.
That's right. Absolutely.
The thing that's interesting, because someone said you're giving them too much credit, but I don't think it is giving them credit. I think not knowing is almost worse. You know what I mean? Because it's like such a denial societally to make sure that these kids don't know. Like, if y'all think all these school board meetings that they fighting in, they're not fighting in it because they want to give the kids a different education. They're fighting so that the kids never get educated. And I think that's what happens. Now, it might come out in different ways, and maybe there's going to be some people that know better but decide against knowing better. But I think if nothing else, the older I get, that one phrase that I've heard since I was a kid about how people don't know history or doomed to repeat it, it just definitely becomes like fact. And I think if you take out the word doomed, for the people who want to repeat the history, it's not doomed. They're like, hoping we get to repeat history. Let's make America great again.
Exactly. You know what I mean? and what I find so powerful about what you said, it reminds me of something I learned from a student recently. Something I do in all my classes is, well, for the undergraduates, we create a list of like a terms of engagement or like community agreements. What's going to make you feel safe and comfortable having these challenging conversations? And some of the reports I get from Black students are just shocking. Like, don't say the N word in class. And I'm like, who is doing that? And they're like, well, I'm like, what? And like, I came from Florida. And I'm like, oh, sorry. I mean, and I'm from Florida, born and raised. But like, one of the things they said that I found really concerning, because it speaks to what you were saying, Rod, about like wanting people to not know, to be deliberately ignorant, is the way that folks have been trained, I think, to weaponize their ignorance. So one of the things that a Black student suggested, she said, well, one of the things I think is important is, don't attack, educate. Don't attack, educate. And I said, tell me more about that. And it says, well, if someone says something harmful, or if someone says something that hurts your feelings, or if someone says something that's racist or sexist or homophobic, you should educate them. You should educate them because they don't know. And rather than being upset and attacking them. And I said, that's a terrible idea. I don't know who told you that. That's a bad idea. I said, that's a bad idea. And I said, you know what? Because I am from the say shit, get hit school of diplomacy. And what happens when somebody is trained to educate and not attack is that you get conditioned to accept your marginalization. You get conditioned to say, oh, they don't know. So you're supposed to what? Spend your entire life going around like teaching people how not to be shitty to you one by one? Are you kidding? Like, and like, at least, honestly,
we have much more access to education than ever before, and information.
There is Google.
Literally. And then the other thing that's interesting is like there's spaces for that, right? Like there are places in outreach and education that is happening. There's like, you might be able to be in a classroom and ask a question that you shouldn't ask a random Black person on the fucking street. Like, it's like that's always been a thing that's not like new or anything, but to constantly make like us the educators, it reminds me of something that's happening in pop culture right now, which is Kanye West's mom died years ago. Kanye West spirals out of control. Kanye West gets married to Kim Kardashian and all this stuff, right? And I remember people saying for years, I always thought it was kind of stupid, but it was like, you know what that brother need? He just need a good Black woman to help him. And I was like, why would you put that work on some random Black lady? But you know what?
Not it.
Right. Yeah. Right. And he did find him a Black woman. And it's Candace Owens, who is currently, like pulling his puppet strings. And it's like, maybe, so when we say this, like, you should don't hate the educator or whatever. Well, who's the person? We actually don't know. I don't feel comfortable with just everybody educating other people all the time. Because maybe you put your hand through, you rub your hand through Candace Owens' hair, and she's like, you know what? White lives matter if you ask me. And I don't want her speaking for me. So go to a class, pick up a book, do something else.
Books are great. There's also amazing podcasts out there,
amazing.
that talk about like Black issues from a variety of perspectives. They even have games like Guess the Race. Like this is like,
I mean, don't go to us, but yeah, I hear you. I feel like we're a little irresponsible. But back to the stitching though. I think another thing, and this happens with like gardening as well, and a lot of other stuff is things that used to be labor for Black people. I think without really like subconsciously we run from them sometimes, where it's like outside, why would I ever not, they gonna keep me, you know what I mean? And I think
honey, you're talking about me, because honey,
well hold up, you were just talking about stitching and sewing. That is labor that used to be done a lot of times by Black people, like Black women specifically, to be like, do this work for us. And so there's something about reclaiming that for yourself. Like, nah, I garden for me, and I'm gonna eat these tomatoes. I sew for me. I'm gonna wear these clothes. I think there's something to it.
Yes.
Almost like a luxury, and it's one of those things to piggyback on some of the things we're talking about before. My personal opinion is that I think a lot of Negroes have got relaxed. And they have actually let their guards down as far as fighting white supremacy. They think that we have arrived. They think it ain't gonna get no better than this. And that's why a lot of them are like, I don't care about voting. I'm just keeping it real. Like they have a certain attitude because they actually didn't have to go through the struggle, because your ancestors died for you to have these, because they're luxuries, and every generation wants the next generation to be better. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now we're at a place where a lot of people have a lot of luxuries that they assume will always be there. Never think that there is a subsection of the populace that has always been fighting and will be relentless and will be dogmatic to take us back.
Yes.
And they're always shocked, and they always surprised, and they always take it for a loop. And they always act like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Then sometimes they be as surprised as the white folks. This ain't my America. They say shit like that.
This is not my America.
And they do.
You had America? Where you got your America from?
Because they think that the things that they have that somebody else died for them to have, and we have laws in place that somebody died to put in place so that people couldn't come and take your shit. Somebody is trying to erode that. That all these things that I'm saying we're doing for luxury, they're trying to put it back where they're going to have to be necessity again. All of a sudden,
absolutely.
We're going to have to farm. We're going to have to make our own clothes. Why? Because we aren't going to be in the working environment. Like they're passing, particularly with the affirmative action. People don't know how much that's going to affect us more than anybody group.
Yeah,
they're going to be like, all right, we put like this. If we do some foul shit, y'all can't sue us. If we can't do this, we can't do that. And it might sound silly, but I've been saying this for years. I am thankful that I am able to do the things that I can do. Something is simple, and people. I think for a lot of people, like they have said, I've watched enough Eyes on the Prize. I heard about Martin Luther King, like, and I think a lot of Black people done got there. But what they fail to realize, for you to go through the front of the bus, somebody had to sacrifice for that. For you to walk into the front of the restaurant, somebody had to sacrifice for that.
Right.
You know, for just the small, simple things, for you to have the right to own a home and all these other things. And I think for a lot of Black people, they have got relaxed, and they think that the Black people my age or the activists, they think we're like, no, get on these white folks' necks. They trying to take y'all shit. They act like we're crazy when we're going. You're taking this for granted. You're going to turn around and all these rights that you thought was always going to be there.
Absolutely.
They started with abortion. Do you think they're going to stop there?
No, it's not. And I think you are absolutely right about all of it. And I think that the apathy might come from other places. I think it also reflects a general apathy in the larger country as well. that people don't believe that voting works. They feel like, these big machines are the one that kind of make it happen. And so who cares? When for us, it does become like that the things that are being somehow voted on seem to manage to be our rights, and like these are the things that are like that people seem to somehow not notice or not want to complain about. But, I think it is so frustrating, and it can sometimes feel overwhelming. But one of the things that I appreciate, and I'm not an anarchist, I like anarchy. I like anarchist, the theory. I'm the world. I'm too much of a capitalist I'm not a capitalist. I hate capitalism, but I live within a capitalist society, and capitalism has benefited myself and my family. And I work in a world where I receive money for goods, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that makes me, I think, a bad anarchist. But what I love about anarchy is this idea that things are flattened and level. I think that we have fallen into this idea that anarchy equals chaos. That is not the same. Anarchy is an actual system of government that is completely lateral. There's no hierarchy at all. And so what it means is that it's about community. It's about we keep us safe. We can work together to help each other. And I actually, through the course of some of my organizing, I know people who now have a farm, who do foraging for food, who came to my class to teach my students how to do that, And so there are ways we can pass these skills on. And I think if we work from both ends of the problem, like the things that's closest to us, to make sure that the people in your neighborhood, your community, your sphere of influence, the people that are in your family, your family's extended, that I feel like everybody doing their part can really make a difference overall. It's just that it's hard to encourage people to feel like that's worth it, which I think
it's just in America, the stumbling block is always going to end up being race. Just historically, like it's like if you could convince white people they're not separate and above, all this shit would be fixed in like a week. Because it's like so much shit is just like, well, at least I'm white. And then like, when we think of like, I think in one of the things that's interesting about America's governmental history, a lot of the programs and things, the building blocks that made America, the things that make it great to people are all shit that black people and women fought for. It's not it's nothing. It's not the inception. It's like white people go back to the founding fathers. They didn't set none of this shit up. All their shit was like, we gonna be slave owners with bigger words. And then for the rest, but it's always like people that fought for people's rights to vote, people that fight for people's people that fought for representation within the governmental structure, people that got fought for affirmative action, people that fought
for free education. People fail to realize free education wasn't always there.
Education,
period. Free and reduced.
The weekend, y'all. How about the weekend? How about having
the weekend?
The weekend, y'all, for real. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, there used to be not such a thing as a weekend.
Yes,
meant to work every single day, all day, a little bit off on Sunday.
You go back and look at who was fighting against it, and it's people that didn't have a weekend fighting against people wanting a weekend, because that's how fucked up America is. So like it would take like a huge Herculean effort, and I think that's one of the reasons they don't want people being educated about race and stuff, because then you start to see the cracks in the fall. You start to see, how much of this stuff is like arbitrary, like these indentured servants ran away. The black one's a slave for life. The other two, y'all gonna get extra 10 years of indentured servitude. Stuff like that is literally in our history books, where you can go back and be like, wait, so y'all kind of invented this race thing right there? Like suddenly black people didn't have rights. And I think the less people know about that, the easier it is to just go, I'm white, and these black people, they want to. I'm voting for Tommy Tuberville because he's saying that racism, the real racism is Democrats want to give money to black people who are criminals. And you're like, there's so many threads back to history for those lies to get to you. We would need to start undoing that in like grade school. And they obviously see the game as afoot right there. They don't want us to do that.
No.
I agree. And this is one of the things that and also the idea, the way that they're starting to, in Virginia as well, starting to legislate white comfort.
Yes.
That it is legislated that white people in particular not be made to be uncomfortable. So when you look at some of these laws and these proposals, because a lot of them look very much the same, because they come from this one think tank or a set of think tanks, and they say things like, no student should be made to feel uneasy or guilty or bad for things that a race has done that they might be a part of. And it's just the most convoluted language that makes no sense. And this idea that somehow the priority of education has now become making sure that white kids feel safe in school, not from guns, not from guns,
obviously
but
not from guns.
ideas, but from ideas that that America's history could be rooted in violence, or the idea that this is why some folks get I know some folks are like, what's the difference between calling somebody a slave versus enslaved? The thing about calling someone enslaved versus calling them a slave, we got slaves from Africa. No, you got Africans from Africa. And then through the process, you enslaved them and turned them into slaves. But all of that little shortcut naturalizes everything. It makes it seem like this was just a natural thing that happened.
We had
without force.
We had a dude that lost his job here, and he was like one of the people that did the tours for like this plantation and stuff, and his job was to educate people about slavery and whatnot, and he overstepped his bounds a little bit because he didn't explain it to the community. But one of the things he was gonna do, I'm sorry, it's funny to me because it's the kind of stuff I love, but it's obviously I get why it was bad. But he was going to have for Juneteenth, it was going to be a white former master on the run from slaves that were now coming after him because for some reason or whatever, right? And it was supposed to be like this day where he was going, but one of the things people took an issue with, one of the things people took an issue with was the fact that he used, and I think it's because everyone was so mad. And so they were mad at the original idea, then they got mad at everything he was doing, right? But one of the things he did that I was like, but that kind of makes sense, is exactly what you said, which is, he said enslaved person. And they were like, no, they were slaves. He's trying to erase slavery. I was like, no, okay, I see why y'all upset. He should have explained, and that's on him because community relations with the black people in the community is
of course
above everything. Like even if the idea is based in some level of history or whatever, if the community don't know, who the fuck is bringing their kids to see this? It's gonna be us, black people. So you got to connect to us. And he got like offended, and black people got mad, and he got fired. But I still remember.
Was this a black person's idea? Was a black person at the museum, and he just didn't have the engagement. He didn't make the connection.
Yeah, I really think it was an engagement thing. I read into it. I don't think he meant bad. I don't think he suddenly just like turned into a coon like one day, like, just woke up.
But
and was
also,
like, I'm gonna lose my job. but you know, you got to communicate with the community. It's unfortunate, but it was when he was questioned about it, he got very indignant with people, and then that was like, you got to go at that point, you know.
And the question for me is, it's about the revenge fantasy that I think is a really interesting apparatus. This is something that Thomas Jefferson did talk about. Thomas Jefferson, in his racist ass book, The Notes on the State of Virginia, talked about like this fear of, he says this thing that I think people forget, but they want to give Jefferson credit for everything, being an abolitionist, who happened to own 605 black people. True. And so when he says, I tremble for my country when I remember that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever, for there is no aspect of the Almighty who can side with white people in this conflict. So he's recognizing that there could be, he's like, and this is one of the reasons why he says, well, when black people are freed, they need to be relocated to Africa because there'll be too many bad memories for blacks and whites to live together. And then he lists all these horrible racist ass reasons for kicking black people out. But it has this idea that somehow deep down, those folks who enslaved other people knew what they were doing was wrong. And as Frederick Douglass said, there is no man who does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
Yep.
Right. And so this whole idea of like, oh, well, definitely it's going to be a lot of revenge and this and that. When there's no like Juneteenth is not a revenge story. You know, Juneteenth is a story about being scammed out of a lot of your labor because white people are scammers. That's why it's a holiday.
It's interesting too because Lincoln had come to the same conclusion too. Was like, and then we sent them back to Africa, right? Like everybody's freedom thing was like, all right, so we fight, we get the slavery over, and then they can't stay here though. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like generations that were born and raised here know nothing about this. This is like we've lost our native tongues.
Exactly.
And everything about us. All we know is our history ends at boat. And so you're gonna be like, go back where you came from to a strange place, a strange country that I know absolutely positive. I'm not trying to find me as an African American. I know nothing about. You're going to send me there and act like it's going to be all good.
So like somebody said once, like, oh, go back to Africa. It's like, bitch, you was my ride.
Yeah, I never been there. Like, by the way,
how
I can't go back.
I can't go back to a place I haven't been. You made sure that.
I used to always make this joke of like, because like there's a certain type of like hotel black person that's always like, we need to just go back to Africa. And I always made this joke of like, I would love to see a skit of us arriving in Africa and African people being like, what the fuck is this? Like, they wouldn't just be like, oh, here's your house over here. Like, that's a whole land with economy, people, ownership.
Exactly.
That's not just a colonize.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll take this house. Like, that's not how this works at all. And the Juneteenth dude, what he did, and this is where he fucked up, right? So he wrote the promo as a like, it was like, I could read it and see it's like a sarcastic take, and it probably was gonna be very funny, which is you can't. I don't know that we were ready for funny around Juneteenth yet. Like it was just ratified as a national holiday. And so the first one out the gate,
we still getting mad about white folks getting the day off while black people got to come into work.
Exactly. He was coming out the box hot. And his thing was they were gonna have a former white like owner, like a master or something, who had been run out of his house by the not the Confederate soldiers, the
ones that came to Galveston, the unions that came.
Yeah, the Union soldiers, and then of course his slaves start cheering, and now he ain't got no home, and they done fucked up his shit, burned the shit, and he kicked him out. Right, that was gonna be the conceit, and then you get to watch this dude basically be sad about the end of slavery, and of course I thought hilarious, the community thought very inappropriate, and probably both right. Like, it's hilarious to me. But I also think a lot of inappropriate things are hilarious.
And it's so funny because it goes against what the actual declaration was in Galveston. Because one of the things that people don't know is that when it's like, yes, finally, enslaved people are finally free in Texas. But they were told specifically in that same order, you're free, but don't stop working. You're free, but don't leave the plantation you've always lived on. You're free, but now they're supposed to pay you. Like, it's like,
and keep in mind, Juneteenth is like 2 years after, so we're not talking about like Civil War where Tecumseh Sherman came through and stomped the buildings and was like, we taking y'all shit. Like, this is 2 years later, people being like, hey, y'all free. Did y'all get the memo? No.
And it's this small band of soldiers. It is a military operation. Military was involved because they had to force people to do it, but it wasn't like, okay,
it wasn't like my homie General Sherman coming through.
Kicking in the doors
like
and whatnot.
Ulysses S. Grant. Okay, Ulysses S. Grant came through. He said, "Listen, we not talking no more." Okay, we tried that. Anyway, so but I love this whole thing where it's like black people intersecting with things that I think in people's minds are considered like white, taboo, off limits, whatever, and it's without them thinking about it. I was listening to your latest episode of Stitch Please, and you were talking with this woman who was talking about historical costumes versus like cosplay and stuff. And in both spaces, it is so interesting, the limits of like white imagination, to where in the historical context, it's they let y'all dress like that, that thing. which is interesting. It's like, there were black people around then, and yes,
we actually had clothes.
Yeah, like actually, a lot of white women had to sell their dresses. If you want to get into it, but what that's interesting, and then the other thing is that's almost in a way more interesting is the limits of their imaginations to see us in completely fictionalized spaces, such as mermaids, such as the black family on Game of Thrones, where you're just like, why can't you even, like, why does that violate something in your mind?
Right.
The mere existence of something other than white people in a space where there's, dragons and orcs and shit.
Exactly. They can imagine that somebody can sing underwater.
Yes.
Right. And that's totally fine to have a singing mermaid, right? Whose lungs don't fill with water when she's singing. Like, all that is happening. But then they'll say something like, well, a black mermaid just isn't scientific, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, and a white one is?
Well,
yeah,
exactly.
It's crazy.
It's nonsense. It's just appalling. Like, and it's the same question, like you said, around the limited imagination, and the idea that for some people, they just want to find their racism and keep it everywhere. That very much part of their way of doing things is to always see themselves reflected. And if they're not the prominent image reflecting back at themselves, then something is wrong. So, you remember the days when you could go down the cereal aisle and you would never see a black face. It was always white people, white kids on all the cereal boxes, white kids and animals. And then when they start putting maybe black kids on, or one or two black kids, people get upset. White people, and I'm saying people because even here I am slipping to this idea that people means everybody, which also means white people. But it's really white people who were the ones upset when they say people are upset about this.
White
thing.
people and Candace Owens, yes,
exactly. Who are the people? Who are the people?
This funny too, because one of the things I realized when I was younger, reading and being into science fiction, especially science fiction involving like aliens or monsters and stuff, so much of it is really just white people imagining being us.
Yeah,
like it's just them going like, but what if another world came here? They would immediately colonize and enslave us all. And I think in their minds, they're going, and race wouldn't matter anymore because our divisions would suddenly go away in the face of this bigger fear. And it's like,
that's not how that works.
Yeah,
at all.
but like whether it works or not, right? It's all fiction, right?
Right.
We have to, it's a fucking Independence Day. Like, I didn't care that Will Smith was black. I was like, we gotta fight the aliens, right?
Let's go.
But there's like a romanticizing of that idea of like, if there was a bigger threat, we'd all come together. In some ways, we've seen it work in history, right? Like, the coalition of blackness felt more together when we had a shared plight. As people become less oppressed individually, some motherfuckers start being like, you know what, now think about it, white lives matter. And you're like, when none of us could leave the plantation, you weren't feeling like that. But okay. But I think so much of it is a recreation of what has actually happened to us. You don't need to look outside. But it is like, what if orcs were the white people of fantasy? What if aliens were the white people of the galaxy? What is all this stuff? Star Wars, all this stuff is just fascism of white people.
It is absolutely.
It did happen. And then, but what if it happened to us? Wouldn't we be the heroes? But they refuse to see us as heroes because they don't even want to see us in the fucking fiction.
Right. Absolutely. And so, you know what that tells me? You understand oppression.
Absolutely.
So this thing that comes about teaching and no. You understand oppression.
They understand they don't want it to happen to them.
Right.
Exactly. They might not know the specifics. They ain't gonna do the reading. They it's one of the reasons that it's very important to keep people from knowing shit that's happened already. But it's like they understand it's bad and they would not want it to be them. And in any instance that we fictionalize it, that's the good guy, right? It's the handmaiden tale. It's the handmaidens that we rooting for. We're not rooting for. So like they do know right from wrong, which is one of the reasons that it's almost like it's not that you don't need to know your history, you do, but it's almost an excuse to be like, well, I just didn't know. You knew you wouldn't want that happen to you, right?
Exactly. And you know what's even more, I think, an additional level, something that I find powerful about the racial allegory. And that's something I think about a lot. We talk about it in my class. We look at the movie, I get to spoil their childhoods. We look at the movie Zootopia. And we look at Disney's Zootopia through the lens of like what Zootopia says it's doing, about like deconstructing race, et cetera, it's actually reproducing by turning the predators into these things that are prey based on biology. So it valorizes law enforcement. It does a lot of things that are problematic. People might not realize. But what I find exciting about looking at Zootopia, I don't know if y'all saw Carnival Row on Amazon Prime. It's good. It's good looking. It's very steampunky, but it is the exact allegory of a mix of like mixed race desire plus a little bit of Nazi Germany and like the difference between the Fae versus the human and the slurs that the Fae get called and all of that. Critch is a short word for creature, which has a very racist slur feeling. All of that shows exactly what you said.
Yeah,
they know, and they're making so much money on telling stories that show that they know. This is a lucrative process, process that says, oh yes, racism is bad. Well, not racism, but like the stuff that happens to bears and stuff. And you know, the thing when a little bunny has a dream.
I always find it interesting when like people are fans of that stuff, but the messaging is beyond them. You know, it's like when it's like it's happening now in the live action universe, but in the comic books, they had Sam Wilson become Captain America, the Black Captain America.
Yes.
And God, I forget my man's name, the white dude, Nick Spencer. Nick Spencer, the guy, I fuck with him forever.
Nick Spencer's the best.
But Nick Spencer wrote the fuck out of that book because I know everybody was thinking it's a comic book and it's switching, but let's just kind of not talk about the racial aspect. And the whole book was about race. It was just like a black man representing America would have very complicated feelings, as would America, but not white people. They would have very uncomplicated feelings of racism. And it just was like, that's what it's going to be, you know, like, and I love that book because it didn't run from it, but it's just an example of like, people watched that and there were people that were like, for the first time reading Captain America. Okay. So before Captain America was this black man, he was Steve Rogers, got frozen in the ice, pops back up years later, and is like, what the fuck is going on with the country? But is immediately on the side of like everything we love about the fiction we tell ourselves about America. You fight for the underdog. You look out for each other. It's about treating people fairly. So this dude pops up from like the 40s and was like, this is fucked up. Why are we doing all this stuff? And that's why he's a hero. There were people that read that book and were like, why are they putting race in it? I was like, bro, it's been in there the whole time. Like Steve would be on this man's side. That is but you see this routinely. It's like, I love Star Wars, but what's going on with all this diversity? The good guys are gonna be diverse. That's what the fucking book. That's what it should be.
Because they're not fascists.
Exactly. So I like to see that kind of stuff, but it's always interesting because like the imagination. I made a joke about House of the Dragon about Corlys drinking wine around white people and being like, nah, I'm good.
That was so funny. That was hilarious.
Thank you. It was obvious joke, obvious like just a funny moment, but obviously us as black people can relate to it. You're like, and man, so the response was so big on Twitter, I had to mute the thing. It was just so many people. It wasn't even like bad. It was just
so many people responding.
So many people responded. I was just like, I can't see all of these. I'll go crazy. But then people start taking screenshots and they would post it in other forums, other places, right? And people would tag me that knew me. They're like, oh, Rod, look at your tweet. And so I made the mistake of clicking on a couple of those places. White people were incensed. Like, how dare this black person inject race into this show that is not about race? This character isn't he supposed to be black? They don't even say what his race is. For those looking later, the professor is as covered up on screen. But yeah, it was very like I had, I don't know, broken some type of sacred unspoken rule or something. That is it's so weird.
I mean, I'm so sorry. I just feel like it's so frustrating because I feel like you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to me.
Yeah.
I won't allow it. Like, because that's what is happening here. Because this idea that somehow you are in, it's so frustrating that they only see race when it's Black people. They don't see themselves as having a race. You know, they don't see that it's only us. And that's the danger. That's the danger, I think. And and also all that you have done, that your podcast, that what you both have done, like with Dem Thrones and all the work. And then like, I love your podcast, and I'm so glad that I found it, and that y'all are doing the recaps for House of Dragon. And it makes me wish that I had done a better job following along when the show was live. I was teaching the class at that time. And the thing I love about it is the way you all create a space of pure Black joy. I wrote this in a 5-star review, but I ended the 5-star review with Rod and Karen are hot. And then I think that maybe they didn't like publish it because they thought it was harassing you. But so I have to go back and rewrite it.
They got some weird rules.
Yeah, we
very weird. So I was like, I can go rewrite it. But the thing I love about it is that it's that, like, I mean, Karen, for real, when you said this funeral was so Black, I thought an outside family was going to show up. I screamed. When you talked about
what I'm talking about. I can't be the only one.
The repast.
I had an uncle younger than me at my grandpa's funeral.
Listen, I am from the South as well, and it's not just the South; it's everybody. It's everybody. But I know of what you speak, and so this is like the way that y'all made it Black, and you made it beautiful, and you made it better. And I would think that this is a great benefit. And like I would say before to my students, like talking about Game of Thrones is a way for people to develop attachments in a variety of ways. Like if you're interested in family drama, if you're interested in sword and sorcery, if you're interested in dragons, if you're interested in political intrigue, it has all of these things.
I'm always so surprised by the people. The thing to me that's interesting is like, I'm not gonna stop being me, but it's so many white people that just miss out on the fun. Like, like that was a good joke, just ostensibly, like regardless of anything. It could be in any show, and it's like, oh, that's funny. It went viral because everyone was laughing.
Right.
And it's just weird to limit yourself to like, oh, a rump. I would never. It's like, dude, I'm glad they don't come over and listen, but it's just funny
too, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to listen. If we learn one thing from the first time we did these recaps, you got to keep it positive and fun, because like, once you bring in like the kind of like naysayer element, it gets overwhelming because everyone's watching it. And I didn't write the damn show. I'm not
right. I didn't write the book.
Right. I'm not here to file complaints for them people. Y'all need to write HBO.com. But for me, I just came to laugh and have jokes with my wife and my friends. Right. Please don't do that.
Absolutely.
How'd you get into like teaching Game of Thrones in your classroom? Like how
are we talking about Game of Thrones now? Can I get my crown?
Yeah, absolutely. Put your crown on. Oh, I like that.
Oh, snap now.
Oh,
yes.
That is giving me like some like I have a dragon in the garage vibes. You know what? She about to stand up and go, unique, and just spin around in the circle.
Exactly.
It is Beyonce on that horse crown.
Come on.
So I got into it from just being interested in the show. And one of the great things about being a professor, especially when you're tenured and you've been there for quite a while, is, you can follow your interests. And so it was a summer session, and I have been teaching lots of different things in the summer because I am woefully underpaid. And so I taught this summer session, and it was so successful. It was a lot of fun. The students really enjoyed the class, so much so that I did it for like 5 years after that. And it was fun because George R.R. Martin, someone from his office, contacted me Sent me some signed, sent me some signed books, and some like Lannister coins and some really nice things. And it was really great. And I actually feel really wonderful to be like one of the first people to have a course in this and be a Black woman. Yeah. Because that just shows you that we do everything. Like we can do everything. It doesn't, this idea that,
no matter how obscure.
Yeah, like we are people.
Find us there.
Exactly. People that, and this idea, I don't believe that anything is off limits to us. I think that those limits have been placed by structures, anti-Black structures, but it's nothing that's like, oh, we are somehow unable or incapable of doing this. I don't think that's the case. And sometimes like my students will say things like, oh, that's just acting white, or that's white shit, or whatever. And I always stop whenever I hear that phrase and I say, tell me more what you say about when you say acting white. What does that mean? Because I'm like, have you met white people? Because what are white people doing that people want to act like them? Like, what are they doing that's so, something that's stimulation worthy? Like, because I don't know what that might be, And so I teach a class on fictions of Black identity, and it talks about this, elastic sense of Blackness, that Blackness is a capacious, beautiful universe. Blackness, if people think of Blackness as a street or a neighborhood, it is a universe. And it is constantly, infinitely self-reproducing itself, doing different things, growing and innovating. People like all manner of things that you might not imagine. And
once you see like a Black person doing something wildly anti-Black, like the Blacks for Trump or something, at that point you have to say there's nothing off limits. Because if you can even do that, then you can do anything. Because apparently, motherfuckers is out here doing anything. Okay.
That apparently. Can I tell you what shocked me the other day? This is news y'all probably knew. I did not know that Clarence Thomas was Gullah.
Yep.
Because I think about the Gullah people as like the blackest of the black people who were able to retain more of their African lineage, people who were able to create this beautiful and powerful culture of remembrance. Like it's just like, you think about books like Mama Day and the film like Daughters of the Dust, and like all of this beautiful stuff that comes from the Gullah community in South Carolina. And like Gullah Island, like all of like you said, Gullah Island. And that's all. I was like,
the thing about like Clarence, the thing about Clarence Thomas that always kind of struck me odd was his hatred for us is so palpable that it's intimate. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how or who hurt you, and you know us well enough to hurt us the hardest with the words that he says. Like there's an intimacy there that, like, I know his in his childhood they say he was picked on for. Now of course it's coming from him, so let's just go with unreliable narrator, okay? But he says he was picked on for being dark skinned, even though his grandfather had all this money and stuff. He was like, the kids picked on me and they called me like the blackest such and such in this area. And that stuck with him forever because it's always some childhood shit that these motherfuckers get to take out on the rest of us for the rest of their life. Nobody goes to therapy or grows out of it, anything. Like, you the only motherfucker got picked on, bro. We all got picked on. But still, that's like, but there's something there where I was like, because, before I even looked into him, I was just like, there's something about him where it don't feel like, sometimes there's like Black people where they hate us, but you're like, oh, they don't know us. Like, oh, you Black people, maybe the only Black people you know are your family. This motherfucker feel like he know us and he hates us more. Like, why do you hate us so much, bro? What we do?
And he said, never again.
Right? And this idea too that somehow that this is somehow a fucking villain origin story. Look at me, I'm dark. I got picked on by everybody. Both of my sisters were lighter than me. I grew up in a Black neighborhood. My parents went to segregated schools. We were a small, tight-knit community where my last name, people knew my father, my uncles, my people. Oh, your mama's a Riley. Yeah, girl. blah blah blah. It like, but that was our community, very tight knit, very beautiful. And Lakita saying that I have beautiful skin.
You do.
Thank you. It's very kind. Rihanna makes this really lovely moisturizing serum blush thing. Yes, fancy. But like, it took me forever to learn how to love my skin. Because my whole life,
and that's the thing.
Oh, you're black. You black as black this. You black as night. Black as the inside of a pocket. I mean, like, that's what we got that.
And that's the thing. You're gonna have to learn. Like, that thing is, you're gonna have to learn to love yourself. That right there is already a hurdle that a lot of people don't have. Right? Like, there's a lot of people that the world loves them from the time they born for whatever fucking reason.
Exactly.
And then there's other people where it's like, you talking to them, it's like, it took me a while to learn to love myself. It's like, yes, because the default in America is no love for you. So
no love for you.
It's interesting to see, like, there's always somebody in blackness that just got it worse. Like, Clarence Thomas talks all this shit. His sisters had it worse than him. Like, his sister was down bad, and he hates his sisters.
Yes,
and shit.
He really does. And he has a position to help her and won't. Like,
right.
Like, it's
wild boy. He's a wild boy.
So sad. Just really sad. And now we're stuck with him forever.
Yeah, well, for a while, nothing's forever. That motherfucker got the flu last month. I was like, is it true? I was like, release the balloons. Oh no, hold on, it's just the flu, everybody. It's just the flu. Calm down.
Got too excited.
But the one thing that's interesting about Game of Thrones is it is something that I grew up as a kid reading some high fantasy stuff, not all of it, but just some stuff. Normally what my grandmama would buy me out of Goodwill. And it is such a interesting world because high fantasy is, Dungeons and Dragons for a lot of people. It's a lot of, Lord of the Rings type stuff. Yes. It's all that. And it definitely had a distinction when I was growing up, where it was like, oh, that's what white people do for fun. And we like, that's not our thing. It took until I got to college before I met other black people that were into that shit, partially because we also didn't have the internet growing up. Right. I think if I grew up with the internet, then you just go find a Facebook group and now black people do everything. At the time, it was black people do everything in your neighborhood. So like, it's like, what, are we into reading comic books? We not? Okay, black people don't do that. You don't know until later that people are into that. But one of the things that's funny is that people see fantasy as like escapism, and it is to a certain extent. But I think now people are less interested in like necessarily escaping through fantasy and more interested in like bringing our social issues to the fantasy and seeing how it handles them. I don't know if you've seen that difference in your time period being a fan of the stuff.
And I guess one of the things I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars. I really enjoyed. I like the escapism of it, just like everybody else did, And I think this idea that the limitations that are placed on blackness should not be the ones that are placed on blackness by black people, right? Like, I think that there's one of the things about being black. One of the ways that you're black, like, I was ostracized from the black community because I was picked on. I was like, bitch, that's initiation. That's how we show love. Okay. Like, that's what it is. Being black, it really is. It is the initiation. And this idea, like, I never thought
white people don't even have the dozens. But no, like every black community has the dozens. You gotta be able to. I don't know. I'm like, I always feel a little bit of empathy. I feel overwhelming empathy, obviously, for my black folks who couldn't hack it. But at the same time, I always feel like the love was right on the other side of the door. You just gotta walk through and be like, all right, you clown me for having high water jeans. Exactly. And now we move on and we're best friends. It's a little rough, but it's not the end of the world.
And even if, like, for me, like, I had this shitty squad of fourth grade girls that were bullying and horrible or whatever, but I now got some really great insults, and now I'm like really old and like very, very resilient. And it's like, so now people still do this to me. Like, they're like, oh, well, like, I was always the person that was the darkest person anybody ever knew. So it'd be like, they almost black like Lisa. And it's like, yep. That's
Yeah,
me.
you get all the
I'm the end of the spectrum. It's like me
and the thing that
nighttime. Me and nighttime. Me
the thing
and
that's so interesting to me is that, and it's obviously a grass is greener situation. The assumption in our heads, and I think this is definitely because of white supremacy, becomes, well, if they were all white kids, I wouldn't be picked on at all. It's like, oh no, baby.
What?
Oh
You don't
no,
know how that works.
Like,
have you met white people? Like,
right.
what about
like
white people
honestly,
make you think they won't pick at people? Like, that's just
honestly, if
life.
the
That's
white people
children.
if they're not picking on you, it's even worse than you think. You know, like, you better hope that you got some that'll just call you a nerd, because if not, they're just saying it behind your back, like, oh God, why'd you invite Leon again? You know?
Yeah, because their language is different.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as you get older, particularly as you get in the workforce, you realize that our language is different. Because one thing I love about Negroes, good, bad, or indifference, we'll tell you to your face if we like it, if we don't like it.
Absolutely.
Like we don't bite our tongue on certain things. And so when I got to the workforce, I didn't understand that white people's language is completely different. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of black people lose a job and don't even know why. They don't even know why they lost their job.
That documentary about the black woman who was born into the white family, and they just let her think she was white, though that none of them thought she was white the whole time. And then like by the end, she realized obviously she's black, because every time she meets a black person, they're like, oh, what's up, girl? And she's like, oh no, I'm white. And they're like, ooh, someone's gonna have to come to a reckoning or whatever. And that, but to me, I always felt like they did her a great disservice as the white family to let that go on. And to me, it was like duplicitous. Like, y'all really was like comfortable being like, yeah, she looked like a fool, but we know that she ain't right. That's whack.
It's also sinister. It is sinister, and it is a form of abuse against this child. Like, they could not see it in themselves.
Yeah, and that's your family member.
And that this is the laziness, though. It's prioritizing, like Think Pretty Smart said, it's prioritizing their comfort as white people over the safety and health of their child, right? If you've adopted this black child and you love this black child, why can't you teach her to love her skin? And it reminds me of something that I sometimes tell my students. People say, oh, Lisa, when I look at you, I don't see black. I just see a person. And I say, here's the thing. Here's what's wrong with that. Because people think this is a colorblind compliment. The thing that's wrong with it is this. You clearly do see that I am black. Right? You see that. And what instead, rather than saying, hey, I see Lisa, she is black, I must now unlearn all of the racist things I think about black people, you will say, Lisa is not really black. So you can keep your racist ideas in place and let me be an exception.
Exactly.
You know, and so that there's nothing complimentary about I don't see you as black.
Also, I have experiences as a black person that I'm bringing to the table, and like I talked to Randolph Terrence, the comedian. We'll talk sometimes, and I remember a long time ago we had a talk where he was talking about when people used to tell him not to be like white people used to shit on Def Comedy Jam, and this is when he was younger and stuff, and so he would kind of like take it and like, I don't want to be that kind of black comic, because obviously, you know, white people are telling me not, that's hack, that's this. And I was like, the obvious point is they're jealous they can't do that comedy. They can't access those rooms. Those communal notes that exist within Def Comedy Jam don't exist within for white people, because they didn't learn them growing up. And mostly the trick is to get you to limit yourself, because if you go out there and you're killing and you got that confidence and you're getting that gig and whatever's happening for you, that's a thing they didn't get and they never wanted you to get. So there's like a level where they want to have you reel your own self in before they can do it.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, truth, and maybe this is just me on the outside looking in, if you could kill in a black room, most likely you can kill just about anywhere. Yeah, because we are the way we look at comedy, sometimes it ain't right, but we'll come in with our arms folded and look at you and be like, make me laugh.
Well, it's the dozens, right? It's you know, like that's the other thing too. If you can make it in like out of my neighborhood and talk that shit, I hope you don't think I'm going to the Harris YMCA and being like, I ain't gonna talk that shit in here. I'm talking that shit. Like that's what I live in. This is how I eat and breathe at this point. I had to turn it down. I remember when I played basketball at the white YMCA. I remember when I first got in there, I was definitely a bit rough around the edges because I had just been playing basketball in the hood with nothing but black people my whole life. And I didn't realize how rough it was until like I would, like, somebody's fighting a call or something, you debate a call, and I just like take the ball and be like, man, fuck that, it's our ball. And they would look like, oh God, what is this? And I was like, oh, is this, oh, am I going too hard? I'm sorry, I turned it down. But the point being, my default setting was 10. So like I can turn it down. I think the same thing with a lot of our stuff is like, you come from black culture, your default setting is 10. It's the hardest one to thrive in.
Yes.
But I can go anywhere else and kill. It's like when people have us as guests on their shows and they're like, okay, so no cussing in there. And I'm like, we're gonna kill this. I'm not worried about that. Like, whatever your rules are, we're well, we do things this way. I promise we'll be okay. We've done it the hardest way 2,500 times.
Yes,
exactly.
Rein it in. I trust me.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this: like, let's talk about House of the Dragon. How are you feeling about this season in general? Like, as somebody, and how did you feel about the first series? Because I know a lot of people's enthusiasm had dipped because of the last two seasons.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And then it's okay, we're gonna do it again, prequel series. Were you like excited, like yes, or were you like, oh, here we go again, I hope it's good?
I was excited, like yes, and I feel like that excitement has paid off. I really think House of the Dragon is better than Game of Thrones. I think it's better than the first season. I think it has the benefit of new writers and more accountability in some ways. I know some people call it fan service when they don't like it, but it's accountability. And I really appreciated that the way that women so far have been better represented. That that gruesome graphic birth scene with Emma in the first one. Y'all actually got me. I printed off a doggone genealogy so that I could keep all the people separate.
There's a lot of names.
A lot of people.
It's a lot of names. It's a lot of people. But Emma, when she was completely violated and murdered so that the baby could come out. Yes. I thought that they had women on they consulted with women, audiences,
pregnant women,
and they did all.
Did you read that article where they talked to those women and the women was like, it wasn't graphic enough. It needs to be
more graphic. Yes, they wanted it more. They wanted And I also liked how they juxtaposed it against the jousting scene. You know, like that was clear. I also really like the sex in the series. I really like how it's so much better that they are investing in the pleasures of viewers beyond cis het white men / boys. And before it would be like titty patrol, titty everywhere. And it's like, dang, I got some of those already. I'm not interested in seeing that.
Yeah, the sex position is gone, which I think
it's so much
it
better.
just serves the show a lot better. The way they film the sex scenes and stuff, obviously, like sometimes through it from a feminine lens, but also through like, I think so when the show first came out the first time, I think their whole thing was, bro, this is not gonna be no fucking like this ain't no Tolkien, man. We about to fuck. I mean, everything that could be extreme, they just did. It was like the most extreme because we want to shock people out of whatever. And then of course comes the backlash and the feedback and stuff. And I actually do think they got better with that stuff the last two seasons. Even though people didn't like the last two seasons, those are kind of the tamest seasons. It was like, all right, we can't show that anymore. Like we can't do that because they were starting to get feedback. This one, there's obviously more women involved. But they also just have the lessons they learned from the first one.
I agree.
I thought people would be more disliking the pacing more than anything because it's very fast. And a lot of people's complaint the last two seasons was it was moving too fast. And I remember they would write in and be like, it's going too fast. And of course they were writing into the wrong show because I was like, I've been wanting this to go fast the whole time.
We don't need to see this Raven travel for 8 episodes. Let's go.
like honestly, they could have skipped every sex scene if they would have just fast forwarded to the next one. For me, I didn't care about that stuff. Like I was like I was very much tired of like, we're sending a Raven to such and such. 3 weeks later, the Raven gets there. It's like,
exactly.
It's a TV show. It's not a documentary. We not reliving this shit.
Exactly.
Fast forward. It can't be that serious. And so this time though, I actually feel like they got it right. Like, and the stuff, I forgive them for the stuff that they gloss over, because I'm like, if it wasn't that important, and if it was that important, they would have stopped and explained it. It must not be that damn important.
Exactly. And I think that one of the things I also appreciate is that the way that they have invested themselves in agency of the women characters. I thought that was much better than before. Like, it's just that it feels like they're making a lot more effort,
and they're writing every character, men and women. They're writing them so much more complex. In that none of them are perfect, which
no,
as much as I love Arya and stuff, it was so much love for Arya, so much love for Jon Snow. It was to the detriment of other characters. You know?
It's true.
We weren't supposed to hate Sansa, but people ended up hating her, and I was like, it's unfair, but it's also partially because they didn't do a good job.
Absolutely,
laying that story out to people to see how sympathetic that character was.
Could be exactly.
And making Arya too good. Like, you literally needed to have Arya do something bad at some point, so people would be like, oh, maybe her sister wasn't that bad to not do what she says. But this time they got it right. Like, just thinking about Viserys and like the decision he makes with Aemma in episode 1, unforgivable. Literally unforgivable.
It is.
You're never gonna get over it. I'll never forget it. And then by the time this dude dies, I'm like, oh God, without him, the family is done. You know,
Big Mama's gone. Big Mama gone. I know what we gonna do. They gonna sell the land. They gonna sell the land to that developer, and then the family's home gonna be gone. And the cousin got problem with them. She got the sugar, and so now what we gonna do? Like,
they fighting over
no more family reunions.
They already fighting over the will. You know, like it was like, that's great writing, because I don't go back to episode 1 and go, I forget what a great decision. But by the end, you're like, it balances out that he made so many other. He saw the big picture and tried to make peace so many other times that you're like, damn, he's not as bad as his worst day. He's not as great as his best day.
Right.
Those are your favorite, to me. Those are my favorite characters.
I do have to say, one of the things I think that that I don't know if we agreed or disagreed on this, because I was the one in the comments during this episode, not this one, but from ones from back ago, talking about Kristen Cole
Sir Kristen
is an incel. And the reason I was calling him an incel, if we think about an incel as someone who is involuntarily celibate, right? Someone who is forced into this position. I am convinced that when I'm calling her Danny, that's not true.
Right,
when the blonde lady, when Rhaenyra and him, when they had sex, this was her decision. She was in the lead. It was clearly, it was a violation. It was abuse of power. All of that is true, right? He could not say no, and that was wrong. But he was hoping to regain mastery over her.
Yeah.
But if she were to restore his honor, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think he was concerned about his lost honor. I don't think that was the first time he'd ever had sex. I don't believe that. I think that.
Oh, it definitely wasn't his first time having sex. He said so, like the week before when she asked him about being a knight, and he said that he could have had his pick of women, but once he became a knight, which actually should have been a huge fucking red flag for her. He says once he became a knight, he didn't have sex with nobody anymore. So it sounded like I guess to me, incel is involuntary, meaning you want to have sex. That's in these guys' minds. Let's just
yes, okay.
I'm about to step into the mind of an incel. I am not agreeing with it. I just would like to put let's just put that out there first. Their minds is they would like to have sex. Women won't have sex with them, and so they hate women. This dude, this dude is voluntarily like, I'm not having sex because my oath is so important to me, and he don't hate women. He hates
Rhaenyra. Okay. Yes. So I can see that. I think that the thing
still
for me,
a piece of shit. For the
definitely a piece of shit. So I agree with that. I do understand that. I think what I was hanging on to in your definition of incel was the contempt for women, and I think that contempt, even though that contempt, it feels like it's the same feeling, right? The worship and adoration he has for Alicent, right? Is just an inversion of the hate
because she is
love
a pygmy. You know what I mean?
Yes,
but I'll say like we'll see. Like we'll see if it's just women in general. He just hate women because like he seemed to be okay around the majority of women, but Rhaenyra name come up. This man
he loses it. Yeah, he can't.
All honor, valor, everything.
The children, even her. Remember how he beat up the kids in the play yard? Like you gonna beat up her children, man? Like
we'll talk about it.
Her name on it.
We'll talk about it tomorrow. But Lord Beesbury took that L for advocating for Rhaenyra. Like that man hates that woman in a way that is just
not women. That woman.
Like he took the vows very serious.
He did.
There's always one like in Game of Thrones. I felt like Jon Snow was kind of not hating women, but I take the vow seriously, and everyone around him was like, "Bro, we are going to the strip club tonight." He's like, "Nah, I take my vow seriously. You know, we're not supposed to be doing that up here at the wall." Everybody else around him, like, as they turned on him and end up stabbing him, he dies for his vows because he's the one person like, "Ain't this wrong?" And they're like, "You know what? For the watch, stab, stab, stab." Sir Kristen is like if Jon Snow turned bitter after getting stabbed. Like if Jon Snow would have woke up and been like, "I'm taking the throne," like that's Sir Kristen is like so deranged about this woman and the violation he feels. And I do find
Jon Snow did get laid and enjoyed it very much and did not manage to turn into a lunatic. He did.
Now, he did end up killing that woman, but
he did, but not on purpose. It was accident. It was kind of an accident.
He didn't want to. He didn't want
her. A child killed her. She got killed by a child. That's not his fault.
Hey, there you go. You know what?
Sorry, spoiler alert.
Manslaughter at best.
At best.
But
Accessory after the fact. Because he was
he wouldn't do the full time.
No, not at all.
The thing about Sir Kristen that I do find so interesting is if you flip the genders on it, I do think most people will feel the opposite. Like whatever she wants to do, whenever that man's name comes up, fuck that man. It's on site. That's why I love the show. Yes, that's why I love the show because it's great. It's the gray area of like, if this was reversed and some prince did this to some handmaiden, I'd be like, if she want to kill this nigga or his kids or whatever, he shouldn't have did it. With her, I'm like, hey man, bro, you got to get over it. It's really been 20 years. You know?
Yes. Let it go. And you know what else? I want another thing I wanted to say.
That same energy
that I love about your show. I love how you teach people how to interact with you. And by that, I mean the way you say things like, don't write in. We don't care. But I can tell you, this was shocking to me. At first, when you all were like, we don't care about what happens in the books. Now, again, I'm a literature professor. That's what I do. I teach. I'm a professor of African-American literature and culture. And when we do Game of Thrones, I've read all the books and we read the first book and we compare that to the first season, et cetera, et cetera. But when I tell you, these book readers have been annoying as fuck.
Annoying as shit.
And I'm like, and I ride for book readers. I'm a book reading ass bitch. That's my job. I love books. But they are ruining it. And I'm like, I'll go into different rooms on Clubhouse, and then somebody will pop in and say, well, the Mad King is a descendant of, and I'm like, click, click, like, out. Like,
and that's the thing. Like,
stop it.
Tell me.
Like, we've learned that from years of trial and error of doing the other reviews. And so, you know, one, there's just a certain type of negative feedback we want to avoid because too many, even shows I used to listen to that would do Game of Thrones, it would eventually become the like, whatever your grievance is, write in and it will go back. And I was like, I don't want to do that.
Nope.
Then the second part of it is the book reader people, even when they mean well, sometimes they slip up into because they know certain things that gotta happen. I don't want to know. And for us to do the best type of recap, in my opinion, is we can't know. If we fuck around and start knowing shit, then it's like it becomes less of an honest reaction from us. And it becomes more about us being right rather than us being like whatever. And so we used to have trolls that would come in the chat room and like put a spoiler up there, or we have people that would email us and go, this isn't a spoiler, it'd be a definite fucking spoiler. Like it's not a spoiler, but I think Jon Snow is gonna die and come back in 2 episodes. You're like, well, why would you do that? And then I don't know if you remember this, Game of Thrones, the show, was having issues containing scripts.
Yes, I remember. I do remember.
People were like heavily they would know stuff from like conversations they had not based on our podcast, and then write in to feel smart.
Yes.
And we're like, it's not about feeling smart, it's about feeling good. Let's have a good time.
Yes, a good time. And there's places for if there's other podcasts that are going deep.
Yes.
And that's fine. Go over there. That's fine. It's
go over there and have a great time. And also, I think for us, like I said, me and Roger learned, because what people fail to realize, if we hadn't set these rules, we wouldn't go do the recap.
Yeah, that's
like we had to set these boundaries.
I'm glad,
because we know us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we know people don't mean no harm. Like, we know people don't mean no harm. We know they're
That's
excited. Right. They want to be here and they're happy. So we understand this. But you guys got to understand, it's two of us. It's a lot of y'all.
Yeah.
And so like, them numbers ain't the same.
No, not at all. And y'all get a lot of input and a lot of energy and a lot of feedback.
And I, like I said, and I know you're excited and you don't mean no harm. But when we get the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, you know, for us, it wears us down, and we want to keep it fun and entertaining for you guys.
I know I had to learn. This is just a thing I learned way too late in my life, but you know, better early than never, right?
Yeah.
But it was like, you have to be honest about your boundaries, because it helps people. It makes the relationship better. I feel like part of the reason it's been easier this year is because when we don't like something and the feedback or something, we can just immediately be like, hey. Like, one of the things we started getting was someone would watch the show and then they send us 12 paragraphs of something.
I did see that.
We haven't even done our review yet. So like, this is really just your blog about Game of Thrones, and I'm reading your blog, which, you know, you should write a blog. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm sure it's very talented and funny, but like, it's becoming something that's not about the blackout tips. It's about you and your feelings in your journal. That's for you and your journal.
Yeah,
and
because it's a time.
But in the past,
in
the past, I would have just been like annoyed, but I would have read it anyway, and I was like, this is kind of a little bit weird that these people keep doing this. And then this year, I was just like, can y'all not do that? And what was dope, and I mean this sincerely, people were like, thank you. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah,
I appreciate you. I'm a change how I write in, and that like we have those kind of fans, and you know, we would never like take advantage of those fans, but it's like, it's beautiful to have that relationship with people, as opposed to people going, F your show, F y'all got an attitude. You know, so
exactly.
I'm very happy
because it's a love, because this is something that we all love. And one thing I really love about covering this show, we have people who write us about the show. They only watch the show too, and we have people that write us that read the books. So we have these people coming from different genres, so we want all these different groups of people to be able to blend together and have a good time.
One more thing too, I promise I'll move on, but I have to give the book readers a lot of credit for the feedback we've gotten this year. Like, they've kept it, like, if it's some shit going on, they kept it to themselves in a way that I would never know. Like, maybe some other book reader would know, but the way they've written in, I have not felt spoiled. I haven't felt like people are taking stuff from the book and like acting like they don't know what's going on just to get it on the show. Like, everybody's been super respectful. Everybody's been very nice. We've gotten more listeners. People are spreading the word. Like, it's a beautiful black ass time over here, and I'm just appreciating that we're able to do that, because it's weird being a hub for something that's not ours. You know what I mean? But everyone's coming in being like, "Oh, I'll respect the rules," and so I definitely appreciate that, and I'm glad that people listening can appreciate that.
Absolutely. We want to have a good time, and so that's one thing I do love about it. It's about having a good time, and I'm glad we have a good time. I'm glad our audience have a good time, and I'm glad that people, you know, continue to write in and interact with us.
Well, listen, this conversation's been great, but we are sponsored today, and we have to pay bills because we are.
Let's do it
as well. So
cover some black capitalism.
We got to cover some black capitalism, so I can do this ad read. Let me pull up this black capitalism song. You know what? Let's go with the short version. Here we go. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. I meant this one.
Okay.
I hear y'all talking, but the only thing I'm listening to is that paper. Every day we get into that paper. Woo! I hear the money talk, I see you later. Every day we get into that paper. I hear the money talk, I see you later. Don't think I forgot Harry Tubman's supposed to be on the $20 bill.
Still waiting on those Harry Tubmans. Today's Black Capitalism segment is brought to you by AfroGrindCoffee. If you know anything about Black people trying to get to the money, is that we gotta grind. Okay. And when I'm grinding, I love to take a sip of AfroGrindCoffee. Literally grinding, because I had to buy a grinder. Okay, it was cheap on Amazon. I didn't even know. Listen, they are putting me on by existing. I didn't even know coffee could come like this. Okay, I got a K-cup Keurig machine or whatever. I just been slapping in them little cups. Boom, hit the coffee button. You can get like a little K-cup holder thing. Grind the fresh coffee, smell it all through your nostrils. Take a little spoon, put it in there. Bam! Now you K-cupping with fresh coffee from the continent. Okay, we can't just go over there and pick up and take houses, but we can buy coffee. Okay. This is how I go back to Africa every morning. All right. Abe Lincoln would be proud. It's dedicated. AfroGrindCoffee is dedicated to elevating your coffee experience with African single origin coffee. And right now, they're giving our listeners 10% off of your order. All you got to do is put in code TBGWT. Go check out the beans. I know y'all coffee connoisseurs probably laughing at me like, oh, you late. We've been on this. Well, I am late, but I'm here now. And I think you should join me if you're listening to the sound of my voice. AfroGrindCoffee.com, code TBGWT. Now, let's talk about these capitalists, okay?
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to start at a low note and build our way up. It's just easier this way.
Okay.
Kanye West.
Okay.
Is buying conservative social media platform Parler with the hard R.
I was hearing about that.
Yeah, very interesting because apparently Candace Owens and him talk on the phone all the time. You want to know who owns Parler?
Who?
Candace Owens' husband.
Oh, what a coincidence!
Yeah. What a interesting. It's like the grift don't stop.
She's trying to get that money.
Yeah, in a world where conservative opinions are considered to be controversial, we have to make sure we have the right to freely express ourselves. He said in a statement released by Parler. What I find interesting here too, in addition to obviously the buying it from this woman husband, he's getting sued by like George Floyd's mom, I believe, right now. For lying about George Floyd. He went on several outlets and said like he went on definitely on Nori's podcast, the Drink Champs, and said that George Floyd, the knee wasn't really on his neck. He died from fentanyl overdose. You know, provable.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, and he been saying about that other white dude that been dragging across the country taking his money.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, Alex Jones just lost that defamation lawsuit. And so, of course, George Floyd's family is suing Kanye. They announced that today. But I'm like, get him. But these people is platforming him.
Did they take Drink Champs off YouTube? I thought I heard they had done that. Did they?
Down, yeah.
Just the episode, not the whole series, just the episode.
From my understanding, just the episode. That's what they were saying in the group chat. Y'all can fact check that in the chat. But yeah, which I mean, after Alex Jones, yeah, you better take it down. What the fuck do y'all think?
They don't want no lawsuits.
I honestly
don't want that smoke.
I couldn't believe Nori and them did that. Not on the like, not even on the level of like morally. You know what I'm saying? Like you're a better person. I think that's already bad enough morally. Chasing ratings at any cost is ridiculous. But dog, legally, y'all don't got a legal department. Right. What's going on over there? Because y'all work for Revolt. Like Revolt got a legal department. I know when I was writing, when we write shit for Game Theory and we do comedy, meaning where there's a license of humor and sarcasm we're allowed to fuck with, right? That a lot of places aren't. It's hard as hell to get a joke through that's not factually correct. Like it got to be based in some level of, because the legal department just literally shows up like, you can't say that. I'm super shocked that they put that shit out, man, just for the views. That's crazy. But
wow.
Now let's get to some black capitalism that we can support. Wendy Williams is reportedly planning to open up a restaurant.
Oh,
I did not know she was in the food game.
I was like, she can. I'm like, she cooked.
Yeah, you know what?
I said she don't look like she be cooking.
If I would have took a bet on does Wendy Williams cook, I would have said no.
I'd said no. Too.
I said no too. I guess we would have all lost.
She definitely got a I don't cook vibe.
That was not on the bingo card. She looked like that auntie be like, to go.
Yes. Like I can hire a caterer. I can hire a caterer. That's what I can do.
Look like I'm not getting my clothes dirty.
I'm gonna send y'all a honey baked ham. They got a 2-for-1 special coming up from the honey baked ham store.
Come on,
y'all gonna get some ham, or I go to Sam's Club.
Patty pies through Amazon. They'll be there in 2 days.
I honestly couldn't see her going to like I can't see myself pulling up in a Walmart and they got like the Wendy Williams. Whatever, like Patty got the pies. I don't know what Wendy would have, but
Patty looks like she can cook though.
That's what I'm saying. Like Patty sold me the pies by just the fact she put her face on them. I'm like, I know these good. Yeah, Wendy, exactly. I don't know. I don't know, Wendy, but you know what? Good for you, sis. And I know they were saying she was having some financial issues with her bank and stuff. So hopefully this is a sign of some good things
on the way.
On the way, you know, go and get that restaurant. Jay-Z has filed a lawsuit against Bacardi over, I think it's Douce, is how you pronounce it. Douce Partnership wants to find out how much the cognac brand is actually making.
Somebody did some mathematicians and mathematics and was like, the square root of this don't equal, sir. Find them numbers.
Yeah, apparently his company, SC Liquor, is requesting financial transparency from Bacardi over Douce, with which he and Bacardi are 50-50 partners in. So this is that thing that people do sometimes. It's like, I don't have transparency on how much y'all are selling. I get a check. I'm just supposed to be like, oh, this is all the check. I want to see all the numbers now.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody seen some units and was like, these numbers don't add up.
Yep.
Right. It's like, it's like the same. Like, people love this. I've been singing about this shit. People buying this, and it's the numbers. The math ain't mathing, friends. Okay. Listen. And I did not get to be a billionaire by letting people unmath my math. All right. So
there's one thing about Sean Corey Carter. He know the math. Okay.
You know what they was doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're not gonna count to 6. Not gonna count to 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. Like somebody been like dropping 1 or 2, and when you get to a few billions, them few 100,000s that y'all left out add up.
He wants records he wants all the records, warehouse locations that are storing the barrels, bottles, and accessories, as well as information about their physical inventory and the process. So he want to make sure they're getting all his money.
Ain't that the truth?
All of it. Why not?
Too, because guess what? If you take a loss, I'll take a loss too. So when you take a gain, I want my fucking gain too.
And all of it, the whole game, not just the little bit you think I should have.
Right.
Former NBA star Charles Barkley donates $1 million to Spelman College.
Good, yay!
That's nice.
Did he do something? Say that again. I'm sorry.
I was like, did he do something, or is he just like, I'm a generous person? That's wonderful. I think that's great.
And like, he got the money. Okay.
Yeah, he's got $1 million is not that much for him. I wouldn't think.
No, and because according to the news today, he just signed an extension with TNT worth $100 million to talk about.
To talk about what?
To talk about basketball.
Oh, basketball. $100 million. Which is his lane. About. Yeah.
No. We just listen. This man has a very specific lane.
He does.
And if he stays in it, one of the greatest of all time. He just stay, just right here.
Excellent.
Stay right. We don't need nothing over here. Nothing. Yes. Just right here.
Don't be a role model, sir. Basketball. We don't need you for a role model. We want to hear
you promise not to be one.
You promise.
We just
you told us you wouldn't.
Just keep telling us how sorry the NBA basketball is and apologizing to America and making fun of the players, and we'll be fine. And I love that for him. And the whole TNT team got signed for many years to come.
Oh, let's go.
So Shaq, Kenny, Ernie Johnson.
They are good at that job.
Great news.
They are the fucking
great
best.
news. That's great news.
They would have been fools to let them go anyway. Like,
I know it. Good for them. And the whole team, that's great. That's really excellent. Yay.
My favorite thing about them is like other TV shows clearly see that they're you can't copy it because it's unprofessional what they're doing. Like they're very
and they have so much fun.
Professionally unprofessional. They're just there to have fun and pick on people and all that stuff. I love to watch the other channels try a version of it.
It ain't the
it's
same.
Impossible.
It's not the same.
Because they have certain personalities that you can't mimic.
Yeah,
and their chemistry. They have chemistry as a team, and you can't replicate that.
Yeah, like they say, like they're able to laugh off stuff that I think would be a fist fight somewhere else. Like like Shaq will look at Charles Barkley and talk about how he's never won a championship, and just like just, it's such a mean thing to say. But like they'll laugh it off and yuck it up and be back next break. And I'm like, yeah, if Stephen A. Smith, if you make a joke about that man, he gonna want to fight you. So just leave it at that. He gonna try to make sure you don't get to come back on the air if you say something about his hairline. So you just gotta eat it. You know what I mean? So I think you can't duplicate it. Good for them. Last, Black capitalism. Oh, actually, I got two more. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The Chosen Son, Bronny James, who is LeBron James' son. Okay. He signs a name and license deal, which is what the college age kids can sign now. They can't like get paid to play basketball, but they can sign name and license deals and stuff. With Beats by Dre, and they have a new campaign where they play basketball with each other and go toe to toe, like versus like LeBron versus his own son.
That's interesting.
Which means LeBron James is old, y'all. This man.
Yes.
Played long enough that he's
been playing quite a while. Yeah.
And it's still good enough.
Years, ain't it?
It's still good enough that we're like, I would watch this man play against his son. Like,
I would.
This is crazy. Wow.
And weren't they saying that there was some kind of fantasy deal where the two of them would go to a team together and they would play together? That's
LeBron's like promise that he just kind of said it offhandedly, so I don't know how sure like is like he will fulfill this, but he said his dream is to play for whatever team drafts his son. So he wants his deal to be like up at the time that his son is eligible to be drafted. He wants to go play, be the first ever father-son duo on an NBA team.
Wow.
Which I don't, no idea if that works out or any stuff. I think he just signed an extension with the Lakers, but it is a cool like concept to think that someone could play in the league that long. That's wow. That's my guy. Okay. All right. Last one. Jennifer Lewis.
Yes.
I knew Karen would say that. Jennifer Lewis officially has her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, let's go.
Oh, that's awesome.
She just came out with a new book too. I'm listening to the audio
another
book.
one.
I didn't know
the first one I listened to was old, but and it was new to me, but it was an older book. But she just came out with one that's like brand new, like this year.
Well, I have footage of her getting her star, and I love this footage so much. First of all, let me make sure you can hear it. So I'm gonna play a couple seconds.
Yes.
And Lisa, just let me know if you can hear this. So can you hear like the noise from the video? Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna play the whole thing now. It's only about 50 seconds. She's there's captions, but she's telling the people watching her sign her autograph. She said, "Vote, don't fuck up." They're taking away your rights. They're taking your rights away as you sleep.
They are.
The motherfuckers don't care about you. You understand me? This is the black. This like my mom getting a star on the Walk of Fame. When she was like, "And while I got y'all attention."
Yes, and another thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love her, and I love this. That is the blackest use of a Walk of Fame. The star on the Walk of Fame.
Talk about using a platform. Remember when that beautiful song she had, it was her with Brandy, and I forgot the other woman. They were singing "Don't fuck with me in these streets," so I don't want nobody fucking me in the streets. And she did another one about get your ass out and vote.
Yes.
Remember, like that was also, and so like I think I really love how we are seeing Black women 50 plus, like doing things beautifully and amazingly. Like I think with writing, and Jennifer Lewis is flourishing. Actually, K said my work. like the flourishing. That is what I'm loving. Now, there's no timeline, no time limit, you know.
Right.
Yeah, Ross. She was Ross from Amen, that third woman.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just feel like this is just, I don't know. It's our time. It's our time, and that we need to be able and willing to extend the full reach of our Black aliveness. You know, like that is where we need, and that's where and that is okay. That is what we need to do. That's what we can do. We should do. And we can do that without apology, without auditioning by now. And that's why even like things like marginalized person or whatever, it's like the margins, the mainstream is the one you are standing in. We get to occupy the fullness of our lives at all times. That is undebatable. That is a cardinal truth of just being a human person. And so we just have to keep reminding ourselves and each other of that. And that, you know, I just have really loved to see this, as well as I'm forgetting her name, but she sang when she works on Abbott Elementary, and she sang that song, the Diane Reeves song. You know what I mean? She plays the teacher.
Cheryl.
Ralph.
You know,
Cheryl Lee Ralph. Yes.
Is it Cheryl Lee? Yes, Cheryl Lee Ralph. Yes. And her role in, you know, getting this Emmy for Quinta, you know, through Quinta's work at Abbott Elementary. I don't know. It just feels so, you know, it's basically it's never too late. And now is always the right time. Now is always the right time.
Honestly, we're not gonna be able to top that for the last word of the show. I really feel like that's it. The guys, that was Professor Woolfork. Thank you for coming through. Tell everybody where to find you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. You can find me at Black Women Stitch on Instagram. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm never there. I'm also on TikTok, but also never there. Or Facebook, also never there. I am mostly on Instagram. And the name of our podcast, my podcast is called Stitch Please. And we center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We work weekly. It's a weekly show. I've been going every week without stop since September of 2019. Shout out to Tea with Queen and Jay, which was like the first podcast I think I had ever heard. And they have been my podcast mentors and models. And I've been able to talk to them in real life and had them talk to my students. And so I just always give them a shout out for letting me know what the podcast possibility is. And I thank you, and I thank you both, and you both. I thank you both for being possibility models. I really appreciate your energy. I appreciate like the robustness of your platform, and I really do appreciate how you teach people how to treat you, because boundaries are not for other people. Boundaries are for us. It is up to us to maintain them. And so when you tell people, do not send me a 12-paragraph email, I don't want it. You know, I love that. And for real, right? Because I can be long-winded. And I was like, Lisa, don't send this man your normal email. This person, he is not your student. He is not interested. Like, just say, you know, and y'all should have seen me. Y'all should have seen my begging ass email I sent. Please, please, please. I really want to be on. Does the Game of Thrones episode? Y'all gonna have guests? I volunteer as tribute. I want to be on. And they were so gracious. And this is a real honor. And I can't wait to tell everybody. And I have that I've been on your podcast. So
thank you, man. This is so fun. Definitely appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
Obviously we love Tea with Queen and Jay. And I saw the consistency with your podcast like clockwork every week. I was like, that's dedication. That's that's the hardest part of all this stuff.
Is to be consistent.
So, and like to be able to tackle one topic, but to take it so many different places. So make sure y'all check her out. I see people already in the chat room like you got a fan.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I see also you're not really on social media like that, which explains the skin. So
come on,
game recognized game. See, you're not all stressed out. And because you be seeing what the people saying. All right, y'all.
Like, I live in the real world.
Listen, okay. Twitter had them. I'm starting to get them. Okay. All right, y'all. We'll be back tomorrow with our Game of Thrones recap. And until then, I love you.
I love you too.
Mwah.
Love y'all. Nice meeting you. Thank you, everybody.
You too.